when I compiled the final data from our 87-day study, I had to double check the numbers. A 13-year-old gained 90 pounds of total strength. That's a 56% increase. A 15-year-old shot 71 subpar round to win his first high school tournament as a freshman. And the 19-year-old college golfer improved his best score from 3 under to 4 under while gaining 155 pounds of total strength. These aren't numbers you see in months. We're talking about transformations that typically take years. But here's what really blew my mind. When I did the root cause analysis on performance issues, we weren't just fixing symptoms. We were identifying and solving the actual problems limiting performance. Let's break down exactly what happened with each athlete. Athlete one's 19-year-old scholarship golfer. Total strength improved from 525 to 680. That's a 155-pound gain or a 29% increase. Ball speed went from 160 to 168. That's 8 miles an hour, translates to about roughly 15 additional yards. Best 18-hole score went from 3 to 4 under. Weight gain, 163 to 169, 6+ pounds of functional mass. Confidence rating was a big one here, 5 out of 8 to 8 out of 10, so 60% improvement. Athlete 2, so the incoming high school freshman, total strength went from 230 to 290, a 60-pound gain, so about a 26% increase. Ball speed, 140 to 150. It's about a 10 mile an hour gain there. Best score went from +2 to 1 under, so 3-stroke improvement. You saw about 1.9 pounds gained in terms of functional mass. Tournament achievement, shooting a 1 under and winning his first high school tournament, obviously a huge accomplishment there. And then again, confidence went from a 4 out of 10 to an 8 out of 10, so about 100% improvement in that rating. Athlete 3, 13-year-old golfer, also a baseball player who hadn't previously fully dedicated and focused on just golf. So total strength went from 160 to 250, a 90-pound gain, it's a 56% increase. Ball speed went from 110 to 125. Best score went from 7 over to 3 over, so 4-stroke improvement there, and gained about 6 pounds and grew about just a little over an inch in this time frame. Confidence also went from a 6 out of 10 to a 9 out of 10. So let's talk about, maybe some of the reasons scientifically, at least from a, informed hypothesis perspective as to why these results happened. And obviously they vary a bit by athlete, which is good. That's what you expect to see. We're combining multiple training modalities, right? And with that, I think we have compounding adaptations happening. Whereas if you're just doing one sport, you may not have that same level of adaptation happening. So another concept to think about and discuss is neuroplasticity optimization. We varied the stimuli, right? They were doing these micro blocks throughout the day. And with that, I think you improve their attention, but also improve the coordination across movement patterns. Hormonal adaptation, same thing with varied stimuli. You're going to have more of a positive stress, if you will, in terms of adaptation, which prevents that plateauing, or at least helps push past the plateauing. And obviously, these are age 13 to 19, and so some of this is also just the window in which human beings develop, right? And so some of this is naturally going to happen just through age, through development. All right, let's go through the integration breakdown and why this system worked by unpacking some of the training elements. So strength training to begin with was 6 days per week. The daily volume was intentionally low by design. I think a lot of people think volume equals better results. I would agree with that, but I think you also have to look at like the scope of what you're putting your system through on a daily or a weekly basis, and how you can get the stimulus part just right while also obviously leaving room for recovery. So that's what we try to do here is optimize the stimulus to recovery ratio. Um, so in this case, low volume, high frequency allows for skill acquisition without excessive fatigue, right? They're doing an hour and a half to 2 hours of golf specific skill development per day. If they're trashed because their front squats were so heavy that they can't maintain stability of during their swing, then that is actually counterproductive, right? So um, we also were doing concurrent training optimization, right? So thinking about managing your strength to preserve energy for jiu-jitsu in addition to the golf skill development. And we'll get more into jiu-jitsu in a bit, so we'll put a pin in that and come back to it. These athletes live in Texas, and so they're on summer break doing this summer challenge, and walking 9 holes in the summer heat is actually a significant stressor, right? So taking that into consideration as well. And really thinking about this from the perspective of we're providing them with multiple low to mid-stress sessions spread out throughout the day and throughout the week versus a few high-stress sessions, all right? And so I'm going to walk you through just day one. You can go back and watch the previous episode 1 video if you want to see all of the exercises broken down. But just going through day one and kind of explaining why we chose the exercises we did. And so we chose front squats intentionally rather than rear squats. If you think about thoracic spine extension relative to a front squat and how that then translates to posture in golf, I think that's a pretty strong transfer. And then the anterior loading really creates deep core stability demand, and that's also going to help keeping your body in the right positions throughout the swing. A big one with TPI, we talk a lot about ankle mobility, specifically dorsiflexion. Just overall that higher level golfers have excellent ankle mobility. And so front squat is really going to promote that. And you'll look at the video in episode 1, you'll see my front squat form where you see a lot of ankle mobility, and that translates positively to the golf swing. And then front squat's more of a quad dominant squat, and so really thinking about ground force reaction and optimizing that specifically for the golf swing. Next would be our next exercise is box jump to soft land. And so, this is about rapid acceleration and then rapid deceleration, which again mimics what's happening in the golf swing. Again, if you listen to a lot of what we talk about in TPI, we talk about putting on the brakes and being able to apply the brakes effectively. And so this is mimicking that. And again, you have that explosive concentric motion followed by an eccentric motion. Also helps with proprioception, so your body awareness, understanding where you are in space also helps you understand where the golf club is in space. Next is Tabata rowing. So kind of the concept of Tabata is systematic oxygen debt training. What we're trying to do with Tabata is put yourself in a severe oxygen debt very rapidly. And rowing, because it uses 85% of your body's musculature, is a good choice for that. It's not the only choice, but it's a good choice for that. There's a lot of different things you can do for Tabata. But because you're putting yourself at such an extreme oxygen debt, you're really going 100% for those 20 seconds. You're not saving anything. You're emptying the tank every time. This creates a rebound effect, right? So you're putting yourself in such an extreme oxygen debt that your body has to respond, and it responds by improving mitochondrial density, by improving CO2, O2 exchange, improving capillary density. And these are great markers for overall health, but also specifically for golf. You walk up a big hill. We used to play at the Oregon Golf Club a long time ago as members, and there's a few hills even in my 20s that I would walk up and I needed a minute, right? And so in a competitive golf situation, you don't have that minute. You have to get your bearings, get your yardage, think clearly. And so golfers don't have a lot of time to be doing traditional endurance training, and it's not really good for their body. Um, Golfers are really explosive athletes if you break it down. If you think about what elite golfers are doing, they're swinging really hard over and over. And so you want a strong, stable body. Endurance running and endurance type work isn't a good fit for that. So Tabata, which is more explosive in nature, is a much better option, and it's going to help the golfer recover very quickly so that they can perform as close to their max potential as possible. Versus if you're still in an oxygen debt, well, what ends up happening there is you lose your ability to be precise. Motor control degradation occurs because when you're in an oxygen debt, you lose your ability to control um, fine motor skills and your repeatability. And so this is really, I think, an under discussed topic for golfers, and specifically college golfers who play 36 holes in a day, and most of the time they're walking. So recoverability, and I highly recommend the Tabata format to do that. So let's talk about the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu portion of the training program. So 4 to 5 times per week, the athletes would train 1 hour sessions. If you think about it, Jiu-Jitsu creates neurological adaptations that directly transfer to golf performance in ways perhaps most coaches never consider, or athletes for that matter. So proprioception, understanding where your body is in space. If you think about fundamentally what's happening when you're fighting somebody else, sparring somebody else, and you have to understand where you are relative to them in space. It really in rapid acceleration, rapid deceleration environment. So it's very similar in that regard to golf. And the next thing I would serve up as a thought is pressure response training. So if you ask a jiu-jitsu athlete about pressure, whether it's a bigger athlete on them, just inside control pressuring them, or could be an athlete that's choking them and they have to stay calm and find a way out of that. Well, that translates beautifully to golf, right? The difference being in jiu-jitsu, you have very little time to think. You're mostly reacting, and that's really what we strive for from a golf swing execution. But with the mental side, obviously, with golf, you have a bit more time, generally speaking, to think through things. But nevertheless, that position of anguish, that position of being, near being choked out or something like that, really does transfer to being calm under pressure. A lot of dynamic movements with jiu-jitsu on your feet, from the top position, from the bottom position, and so jiu-jitsu athletes generally have some of the best cores of any athletes, because they need to be able to control their body in ways that demand a lot of the core. And so if you think about what we're trying to do with golf, we're trying to swing a golf club in most cases as fast as we can while being stable, right? So it's repeatable. And so jiu-jitsu in that regard really promotes that dynamic. Next, I would offer up grip strength. We know that the stronger your grip, the faster you can swing. And we also know that jiu-jitsu and judo and sambo will tax your grips a lot. And so this is just a great training ground for grip strength development, really straightforward. And then most classes are going to offer up like 15 minutes of sparring at the end of class. And by the third spar, depending on who you've gone with, you're going to be pretty smoked. If it's a Pohada night where you've got a lot of sparring, you might be 5 or 6 rounds deep into 5 minutes each, and so you're getting fatigued. The same is true of college golf. Hole 34, hole 35, hole 36 of golf on a hot summer day. or even a hot spring fall day, right? You're going to have some fatigue. And so, again, that's a transferable, learnable skill. And I would say that there are other sports that would offer a lot of benefits, like jiu-jitsu, wrestling being an obvious close cousin, if you will, as well as judo. But dance, as an example, also great in terms of rhythm, coordination, balance, body control. Rock climbing would be another one. Incredible grip strength development, core stability, and problem solving under stress, right? So I think jiu-jitsu has a lot to offer. I think we can learn some things from that and also look at other sports that have similar benefits. Let's talk about the variety factor. Something most coaches miss. Teenagers have limited attention spans. By varying training throughout the day, so 9 holes of golf, strength training, jujitsu, skill practice, individualized TPI sessions, recovery things, um, you improve their attention span. Really, you improve their engagement because you are giving them a variety of stimulus over a relatively short amount of time, right? Um, we can talk about how dopamine systems respond to this because you're maintaining that reward system with a trigger that's always sort of right there ahead of them. Um, I think more than anything, though, it's that you're preventing the staleness that can come from training and trying to keep it as fresh, as interesting, as varied as possible, while also thinking about productivity in that overall context. The next thing to talk about would be the TPI biomechanical conditioning that occurred 3 to 4 times a week. I think really the TPI workouts are a great warm up for a golfer to do right before they go out, maybe even right before a range session. If you're a golfer that likes to hit the range before you go out, you could also add that. But I think at the end of the day, what the TPI screen does so well is it identifies personal limitations, and then from that provides a customized program that complements the other work that we're doing. And so they're getting specific exercises that remedy their specific vulnerabilities and weaknesses. So that really improved their movement quality over the course of this 87-day period. And because it was a 15-minute, 3 to 4 times a week, it also removes like that heaviness that comes with extended workout programs. It's just a quick 15 minutes, so it really is easy to execute upon, and it's directly tied to their goals, right? Of lowering their score, getting as fast as possible, getting as strong as possible, specifically with regards to you know optimizing the kinetic sequence, and really the TPI biomechanic workout pushes you towards that. So let's talk about the mental performance aspect. A significant finding emerged from systematic implementation of the BRAVR mental performance framework. All 3 participants adopted BRAVR as their trusted mental system. So let's look at the results by athlete. Athlete 1 is a 19-year-old college scholarship golfer, moved from a 5 to an 8 out of 10, so a 60% improvement. The 15-year-old incoming high school freshman went from a 4 to an 8, so 100% improvement in that rating. And the 13-year-old went from a 6 to a 9, so a 50% improvement in that rating. And 100% of the participants identified BRAVR as their go-to mental system moving forward. So, really this showed up for all of the athletes throughout the period. Um, the 19-year-old made the cut at a difficult amateur championship and shot a really good, like, top 10 round of the day in that process, and found some confidence coming out of that, and got into some some tough spots a few times where he had to lean on the BRAVR mental system and did so well. The high school freshman winning his first tournament, he needed to make a par on 18 to get that win, and 17 was a little bit shaky. So having this process and protocol and framework to lean on gave him the confidence, because he didn't have to walk off the 17th anxious, not knowing what to do. Instead, he had a framework, he knew what steps to take, and he was able to get back to baseline and perform at his capacity. And the 13-year-old, had a great breakthrough personal low in one of the higher level leagues. He had a personal best score. So we saw, though, throughout that round that he was able to move forward from difficult situations and let it go. And because of that, it didn't snowball on him. He was able to get back to full capacity quickly after one bad shot, and it did not turn into a bad hole or a stretch of bad holes. And so when we went to implement this, we did it daily, right? Because you have, 5 steps, and in some cases some sub steps, and so you're creating a new habit, a new pattern, and with that you need prompts. So if you're playing and you hit a poor shot or a shot that you wish you could repeat, you need a prompt to begin going through this process, right? And so we worked on integrating those prompts and the awareness that would help them know when to move into step 1 of the protocol. We also then, of course, deployed and monitored this in competitive situations to see what was working well and what do we need to fine tune and refine a bit. And then with that, we would check in both during practice rounds as well as during competitive rounds on their hole by hole score, their hole by hole mental game rating, and how they were progressing overall as a trend. So the root cause analysis, let's talk about how we looked at stats. This is an example of a systematic analytical approach. We had weekly stat reviews on Wednesdays, and with that, we looked at athlete 3 and saw his feet of putt made metric was consistently below target, but his 3 putt avoidance was fantastic. And so we took a deeper look and really peeled the onion a little bit here, because at first glance you might think that he has a putting issue, but when we again peeled the onion, we learned that, well, actually it's his proximity of approach was such that if you look at the proximity of approach and then you look at his feet of putt made, you could deduce that he was consistently coming up a bit short and having to chip, and his chip proximity was poor. And so we then derived a plan to enhance his 50-yard and in game, so pitching and chipping. Went to work on that, and then because his proximity of approach improved relative to chipping, as well as to, by the way, his iron play, those are interrelated variables, then his feet of putt made improved because he was consistently closer and therefore making more putts. And so having an athlete track their stats, meaningful stats, and that's really subjective, up to you. I have my own philosophy on what those are. But I mean, I think most people are pretty sensible about what you should be tracking. But then how do you interpret that data? And then how do you put meaningful practice plans forward from that data? That's really where you can start to see progress. And I think it can't be stressed enough that the weekly stat review as part of this program was huge, because it then informed what we call the greatest opportunity for improvement and their practice plan specifically on that element for the next week. What this means for you: this study demonstrates that systematic, multidimensional training produces results that seem, quite frankly, impossible with traditional approaches. But here's what we can replicate. The framework: integrate multiple training modalities rather than focusing on single activities. Again, you can think beyond golf and jiu-jitsu. You can think of other sports that are complementary in nature or other activities that are complementary in nature. Use data to identify root causes, not just symptoms. And a note on that: train an athlete on how to collect the data. Um, Make sure that on day one, if you're doing something like this, that all the data is collected in the same fashion, right? And that's an important thing. But use that data then to identify root causes, not just symptoms. I think athletes at 13 years old are plenty mature enough to begin implementing a mental performance training system, and BRAVR is a great option for that. There are other options, I'm sure, but I think athletes have incredible neuroplasticity at this age and the ability to learn, and so starting the systematic training young, I think, is only going to help them perform down the road. And I think variety is key. If you find yourself in the gym banging away and you've been doing the same workout for a year, I don't know how you do it. I think there's got to be some level of variety to prevent boredom. And, I think it also optimizes the stress stimulus response. And I think lastly here, sort of my final comment would be, look for a way to address individual limitations and then personalize the programming. TPI and the physical screen gives us a great starting point for that. I think you then take that a step further into their lifting program, their actual skill development program, whatever those limitations may be. um, and some of what I presented, there are alternatives, obviously. I mentioned already, it's not limited to Jiu-Jitsu, but the same would be true for Tabata. I think Tabata is a fantastic tool for athletes who need recoverability, but also need a program that will allow them to get there efficiently, but also they can do it with kind of equipment of their choice, whether it's a rower, jump rope, sprints, body weight exercises, and kind of customize it in that regard. So I think a lot of sports, golf included, you need recoverability, you need endurance, but you don't really have time to train for it, and you have to be careful about what the training approach does relative to your biomechanics. Yeah, so final comment there, as far as the data collection and the metrics, simple is better. We only collected a few that we deem to be of critical importance, and then look to deduce meaningful outcomes, meaningful decisions, if you will, from that data or those data. This 87-day study changed how I think about athletic development, and I hope it did the same for you. We're not just about making better golfers, we're building complete athletes with enhanced physical capabilities, mental resilience, and strategic thinking. Key takeaways: integration beats isolation in athletic development. Data-driven analysis reveals root causes traditional coaching misses. Mental performance training must be systematic and daily. Variety prevents boredom while optimizing adaptation. And individual limitations must be addressed through personalized programming. So some next steps for y'all: assess your current training for integration opportunities. Could be pick up basketball at lunch, could be pickleball, could be a number of things. Those opportunities are all around you. Look for them. Implement some basic data collection for your performance. You're going to go play a round of golf, pick a metric. Could be proximity of approach, as an example. It's the first time you intend to hit the green. How close did you get to the hole? Right? It's a great metric, and it really informs a lot as an example. Begin systematic mental performance training. Start with B for baseline. You feel yourself, spinning up, and after hitting a shot you wished you could redo. Box breathing. 4 seconds in, hold it for 4. 4 seconds out, hold it for 4. Regulate yourself a little bit. That mental performance training, take it one step at a time. I think the ROI will be far more than what you can expect. Create variety in your training. It's going to keep you interested, maintain your engagement, prevent that staleness. And lastly, focus on root cause analysis. Something else might be causing you to score higher than you'd like to or to diminish your enjoyment of the game. That root cause analysis process might uncover something that would surprise you and lead you down a very positive path.